So that's the first two steps of our discussion today. The first is we tried to give an example of what fairness feels like in the real world. And it was this debate about whether or not this AI tool for analyzing skin lesions could be used. And then the second step we took was to give a thorough analytic and theoretical definition of fairness. And that's Aristotle's notion of equals treated equally and unequals treated unequally within the decision domain. Next, I want to look at a case study. How does all this work in the real world? And here is a case for a real world AI case for hiring. In this case, the following a tool was used in the following way. People who wanted to apply for a job at a large company, let's say Amazon or a different company, which gets hundreds, thousands, who knows, thousands of applications for jobs every day. Applicants were asked to take a video of themselves, and they could do this whenever they wanted and however they wanted, and just answer some basic questions about themselves, who they are, and what their interests are. And they could take the video as many times as they liked. If they did one video and they did not like the result, they could do another one and do another. But when they were finally happy with their result of their video, they would upload the video to this company. And this company then would use an artificial intelligence to run a preliminary check on this video. And this check scored the video in terms of these five qualities that you see on the slide. Openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Now, the first four obviously are positive qualities. For the most part, they're things you want. You want people to be open, conscientious, talkative, and agreeable. And you don't want them to be neurotic. Right? That's the negative one. So you can see here that these two candidates, and we're going to come to a complication, but just for a moment, we'll say these two candidates got different scores on this from this AI when they sent up their video. Now, what's interesting about this case is that this is actually a paid actress. And what this actress did is she memorized a script talking about herself and her interests. And then she read that script and had it filmed. First, as you see her on one side of the screen there without a headscarf. And then she read the same, or rather pronounced the same script with a headscarf. So she said the exact same things, and to the greatest extent possible in the same way. But she got very different scores. Scores which might well mean that one version of her, in this case, the one with the headscarf, that version of her would be forwarded for further interviews. And the other version of her saying the same thing would be rejected right from the start. And there's the question about whether or not this is fair. Now, this is an interesting case, but the next one is more interesting. The next one is more interesting because it is, again, it's an actor. But in this case, the actor did not repeat the lines once and again, but with different clothing or something. Instead, the actor did the lines once. So there's one video of the actor giving the lines against, in this case, a white background. But what they did is they used green screen technology so I guess originally it was not against a white background, it was against a green background. They used green screen technology and took this one video and put it against first a white background, and then second, you see here against a library or books in the background. And ding, 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 the books, the AI really liked the books, gave the person a much higher score. And curiously, again, we cannot write this off to slight differences in the way the person spoke because it was the exact same video, but with one background or the other. And again, there's a very serious fairness question here because it would appear that very possibly the same exact application could be rejected if it was sent against a white background and forwarded for further processing and more direct interviews if it was against the background with the books. Now, is this fair or not? When I talk about this in my seminars, I get a lot of different responses. Um, some people will make the argument that it is fair when I go in, let's say, I go into a job interview, it is fair for the interviewer to judge me at least partially on the clothes I wear. Am I dressed nicely? Do I appear clean? Am I well kept? Or are my clothes dirty or slovenly or are they inappropriate for this kind of interview? People will say, look, that's part of an interview, how you dress. And when you go into an interview, it's not just what you say, but how you present yourself. Um, so in that case, if how you dress is part of what should be considered when you do an interview, then why not the background you choose for your video? Isn't that just another way of expressing who you are? Isn't that just another way of exhibiting yourself as a candidate? You choose the words you say, you choose the clothes you wear, you choose the background you place in the video. These are all ways that you make your job interview. And each one of these should be counted as part of your application. Whereas by contrast, other people say no. They say that can't be right because people think when they're doing a job interview that all that matters is what you say. Maybe how you dress, but the background, it's called the background because it's the background. It doesn't matter, or it should not matter, whether it is white, plain white, or books. So this brings us back to the question about fairness. Is this a case of equals being treated equally? Or is this a case where unequals should be treated unequally? Let me explain. We have the AI technology today. We've all seen it with our phone. You can, with two fingers, tap your phone, and automatically on a photo you've taken on your phone, it will extract the subjects, right? And it will just take the background out. So we have the technology to take a video that is sent to us by someone who is seeking a job and just automatically take out the background. Then we can take that video without background, send it to a subsequent tool in artificial intelligence, which will then analyze the video and give it the grade that you see here on the screen, a grade in terms of openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, etc. So we can use AI very easily to strip the background out, just to make it the pure person and their clothing, and have the AI analyze that. In fact, we can go further. We can also train an AI, a first AI, to take everything out except the talking head, right? So we could take both videos. In one case, it would take out the shirt and the white background. In the other case, it would take out the shirt and the book background and leave just a speaking head. And those two videos would then be exactly the same. Um, and then you would take that video treated in that way and send it to a subsequent artificial intelligence. And that artificial intelligence would be in charge of analyzing the video for these qualities. Um, but the point is that the interviewing company, they have the ability to make the decision. When an interviewer sends up their video, should they extract everything except for the face? Should they leave the face and the clothes, but not the background? Or should they leave the face, the clothes, and the background? Which decision is fair? The answer to that question is which decision, what things should we include when we talk about fairness? Should we include the background or not? Now, of course, there's no right or wrong answer to this question, but there's better and worse understandings of what counts as fairness in this case. And I think a company could take any one of those three options and justify it as fair. But there, again, there's a difference between doing that, between choosing intentionally one option, justifying why you chose that option, and then going forward, or just leaving things up to random, random chance. So the conclusion here is I am not sure what the solution, what the fair response is for managing these uploaded videos. Um, but I am sure that the options are available to companies. And the best way to manage that decision is by making a decision about what counts as the decision domain. In other words, should these people be reduced to equals treated equally? And you would do that by reducing them simply to their faces speaking, and then they would be literally exactly the same, saying exactly the same words. Or is this a case of unequals treated unequally? One chose to have the books, one did not. They're unequals, and therefore one should be scored differently from the other. Okay, that was a fairness case in hiring. Very quickly, in just 30 seconds, this is a different fairness case in hiring, which is quite famous. The Amazon company developed an AI to do exactly what we just saw, to try to do a preliminary screening of workers, because they get so many applications every day, they can't manage it all. But what they found was because their tool was trained on their own workforce and the high performers in their own workforce, one, and because their own workforce tended or did not tend to did have many more men than women, uh, the tool learned from that information. Okay, good. Since the tool thinks, since Amazon hires more men than women, then men must be better than women at these jobs. So therefore, when I get two applicants, and one is a man and one is a woman, I will score the man. I'll give the man a higher score. That's exactly what the software did. And now Amazon tried to get rid of that by not telling the machine whether it was a male or a female on the application and kinds of things, but they just could not train that bias out of the machine. Right? And this is a case where unequals this is a case where rather equals were treated unequally. So it's not fair because at least for most jobs, it should not have mattered whether someone was a man or a woman. So on that measure, they're equal. Um, but they were treated unequally because the men were getting better scores by virtue of being men. So we have a definitional reason for saying the Amazon hiring algorithm was unfair. Equals were treated unequally. And that's what happened. And they couldn't fix the algorithm. And so finally they got rid of it. But it's a real world case which some people talk about when they talk about hiring and AI. Then finally, I want to make a last question, which we could talk about for quite a bit of time, but we will not. I just want to raise it as a question. We know a lot about visible bias, and that is the machine might treat one gender, male or female, better or worse, or it might work better or worse for lighter skinned or darker skinned people. But what about bias, which is invisible? Now let's go back to the Amazon case. If it happened just by a statistical aberration, that Amazon hired very few people whose last name started with W and many people whose last name started with other things, what would the machine learn? Well, the machine would learn that W is bad, right? I mean, the machine doesn't know. The machine doesn't make a causal connection between why people are hired or not hired at Amazon. The machine only looks for patterns. So a human being, um, even if a human being was told that very few people at Amazon their last name starts at W, that would not affect in the least their hiring decision. A human being would not care, but a machine cares. If Amazon has very few people whose last name starts with W, the tool underline will, begin discriminating against and discounting the applications of people whose last names start with W. And the problem we have here is we have no way of discovering that because no one would think that, right? I mean, with the question of gender or race, because we've grown accustomed to looking at these things, we tend to examine the tool to see if it's doing how it is performing in those areas. But these kinds of invisible biases, which no human would fall into the trap of performing, these kinds of invisible biases might be going on all the time and we just don't know. So the question is, then the question I want to ask is, the technical question might be, how can we find and identify these? But the ethical question is this fair or not? Um, in one sense, of course, it's unfair because equals are being treated unequally. It shouldn't matter what your last name first letter is. So that should be equal for everyone, regardless. But in this case, you're being treated unequally because those with W are having their scores downgraded. So it's unfair that way, certainly. On the other hand, you could make the case that it's kind of fair because we're all equally vulnerable to it, right? All of us have probably suffered from this at one point, and maybe over the course of time, the unfairness sort of balances out. So in that strange way, it's fair. It's fair in that the unfairness is equal. Like all of us suffer sometimes from this. So there are different ways, as always, with fairness to look at these things.